Well, g'day guys, and welcome to Drive Safe Australia. Today you're actually going to hear me talking, and we're going to talk about a pretty touchy subject, especially for P-platers. Now, I know a lot of them get very upset when you mention anything against them and stuff like that, or you're trying to control them more. But the fact is, rules need to be made for the worst in the area. I know there's good P-platers, and I'm not doubting you guys, okay? So please, I am not having an attack on you. But rules cannot be made for the good drivers, has to be made to cover all bases. And unfortunately, rules have to be made for the worst drivers. Now, it's very good that the governments work into looking into power restrictions and restrict what kind of vehicles P-platers can drive when it comes to power to weight ratios, but I don't think they take it far enough, because unfortunately it's not just the amount of power that a vehicle has, it's the type of vehicle that it is that encourages a P-plater and others, not just P-platers, but in this case P-platers, to drive recklessly. And of course that's when we end up seeing them wrapped around poles and been driving recklessly. From my experience, I get to see a lot of pretty poor driving standards on the road, and P-platers unfortunately are one of the ones that are driving quite recklessly. And one thing that's a very common theme is the P-platers that seem to drive recklessly and fast are all in modified vehicles, mostly in modified vehicles. And this really brings to question, they try and stop P-platers from driving high performance vehicles because they don't think that they can control them, because control comes with time and also doing courses and knowing what you're doing. I believe that P-platers should not be allowed to drive a vehicle that has been modified in any way or form. Well, tow bar, stuff like that. Any kind of performance related modifications to a vehicle, a P-plater should not be allowed to drive. Because what does that entice? A vehicle that has been modified for sporting intentions means that the vehicle has been modified to be driven quickly. As such, a P-plater should not be allowed to drive not only vehicles of certain power to weight ratios, but also vehicles that have been modified for any kind of performance enhancing. Because end of the day, what that does is encourage the driver to drive quickly, and that is something that needs to be addressed. I'm sorry, again, there's going to be P-platers that are going to argue with me here and saying that we're trying to control them too much, but at the end of the day you're still learning the drive. You're off your learners, but you've still got a lot to learn when it comes to normal road. And the fact that a lot, not all, P-platers drive recklessly when they're in either high performance vehicles or vehicles that have been modified really says a lot. And I think the governments don't go far enough in their restrictions of what cars P-platers can drive. And I do truthfully think that P-platers should not be allowed to drive a vehicle that has been modified for any kind of sporting. Because then again, end of the day, you can't deny the fact that a car that has been modified to take corners faster, loud noises and stuff like that, it encourages them to drive faster. Now, if they just did that on racetracks, that's all great. But unfortunately, they're more inclined to drive more recklessly on the main roads. And as such, rules need to be written accordingly. So, end of the day, I believe P-platers should only be allowed to drive vehicles that have obviously power to weight ratios restricted, but also modifications of the vehicles for any kind of sporting improvement should be restricted, because that just encourages them to drive faster and more recklessly on the roads. And as far as I'm concerned, while you're on your P plates, it's called probationary, which means you're still proving yourselves to be a good driver on the roads. And as such, you don't need to have to drive vehicles that have been modified to take corners faster, to look faster, to sound faster and stuff like that, because all that does is encourage to drive faster. That's my view. Comment below. Be interesting to see what people say.